This is fishy.
A lot of people do feel that way. A lot of the comments are saying that.
You know, I'm having a hard time with this. Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty and confessed, and as we do this episode, his sentencing is coming up.
Even though he's pleaded guilty, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in this case.
The Kohberger case does not have the finality that a lot of people think. I am attorney Andrew Myers, and in this episode of About the Law, that's our topic. Joining me is Kelsey. Hey, Kelsey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. A lot of developments going on in this case. You know, one of the purposes of the judicial system is to establish finality in matters that go before it, whether it's a civil case or a criminal case. Finality is one of the goals of the system. And a lot of people, especially attorneys out there, are saying, well, we've achieved finality because Mr. Kohberger has pled guilty. He signed a confession. That's a document that's in the court document. But is this case really final?
I just feel like they're leaving a lot out in the open. He pleaded guilty. They finalized it quickly, but there's still a lot out in the open unanswered.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, well, you know, people, including a judge, there's a judge out there that's done a statistical analysis, which longtime viewers know that I question surveys and studies and statistical analysis. And this judge says that, yeah, a lot of people in United States plead guilty when they're not really guilty. But yeah, judge, put the statistics down. Generally speaking, when that happens, it's a person that's been held. You know, they're a person of interest. They're a suspect. They've been arrested. They're in jail. They faced a wait of a long time until their trial comes up, and they're offered a plea deal that if they take a plea, they can get expedited, they get a plea hearing, and they get out. And that's often, not always, but that's often the context of people that do take a plea when they're actually guilty. This case has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with those statistics. This is a case where Bryan Kohberger has, at this time, been behind bars for 2.5 years. He faces an unknown future in a trial. And so, you know, apparently he felt that the evidence was very strong against him. And we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Though a lot of people do believe that he was forced into pleading guilty.
Yeah, they do feel that. I mean, and I'm not disparaging the whole concept of people that do plead guilty or get found guilty, and they are, in fact, innocent. I don't think this is that case.
I don't believe it's that case.
So one of the things that the real, you know, diehard people who profess Mr. Kohberger's innocence have said is, oh, even at the plea hearing, you know, the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, said that we don't have the proof. Well, that's not true. That's not true. That's not what Mr. Thompson said. So let's go to that hearing and look at exactly what Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, did in fact say.
The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times.
All right, so those were his exact words. And, you know, the people that are still saying, you know, he's innocent, he didn't do it, they're saying, well, Bill Thompson said that he never went in the house. That's not what he said at all. What he said was between, you know, July 9th and early November that, you know, he pinged those cell towers. Now, I don't buy this whole cell tower thing. I mean, you know, I go to the grocery store every week and, you know, who knows what I ping? Who knows, you know, what crimes have been committed in an area where I ping the phone? So people that cite that by saying, well, he said we don't have any proof he was that. No, here's the next quote, which we have to listen to very carefully. We attorneys don't have tools like a carpenter or a plumber or other skilled people that I acknowledge have a lot more skill than I do in those areas. An electrician comes into your home and he has a whole bag of tools. Our only tools as attorneys are words. That's it. Language. And so you have to pay attention to the language of this guy. And here's what he actually said about that night and what the evidence did say.
The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked.
So they have evidence, he says, that Mr. Kohberger did enter the home. So again, words are important. Here is the text of what was just said. Quote, the state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. So people that say, well, the state admitted they don't have evidence that he was in the house, that's the quote. I'm not saying he was right. I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm just saying those are the words that were used, and the words that were used indicated that the state did, in fact, have the evidence on the guy. You know, there are a lot of issues that people bring up. I mean, you know, the whole investigation was shady. The whole investigation from start to finish, you know, people were going in and out of the house. They didn't keep a log of the people that were going in and out of the house on November 13th of 2022. There's the whole question of the 8-hour delay. And once the police did get there, law enforcement traipsed in and out. No log was kept of who was going in and who was going out. And there are a lot of questions about, you know, evidence that was not looked at seriously. You know, a couple of weeks later, the chief of police, Mr. Fry, drove a U-Haul truck over there and took out some of the possessions of the families. And the families were not allowed in. Sure, saved them the horror of seeing the scene, but the families may well have been able to say, this is out of place. This is something that maybe the person left behind. We don't know. So that was kind of a shoddy, questionable thing. And then they destroyed the house. There's
just a lot of things that don't add up.
There are a lot of things that don't add up. They destroyed the house. Not only did they knock the house down, they carted it off to a then undisclosed location and buried it, which, you know, and then the prosecution wanted to build a dollhouse. Oh, I know, we're not supposed to call it a dollhouse, but they built a phony baloney, not to scale replica of the house to show the jury when in this day and age in 2025, there's software that's available to actually build a totally perfectly scale model, but they didn't want to do that. A lot of questionable things about that. And I don't know. I still have to think as an attorney that he went into the court. He acknowledged that there was evidence. He went into the court and pled guilty. And so to that extent, you know, he signed away all rights of appeal. So to that extent, yeah, there is some finality to the case, but I don't think that we've heard the end of it. We've all heard of Dr. Catherine Ramsland. She actually was one of Bryan Kohberger's teachers when he was at DeSales University. She taught 4 classes that he was in there. And she described him, let's see if I have the quotes right from Dr. Ramsland. She said he was eager, attentive, respectful, polite. She did say he was intense. And Dr. Ramsland, of course, is a professor of forensic psychology. She wrote a book about BTK, that's Dennis Rader. And she wrote the book on him. One of the issues that is raised with Bryan Kohberger is, oh, he was such a nice guy. He was so polite, intense. So the question becomes, how does society, you know, and this was asked of her, how does society peg people that are going to commit serial crimes? How does society, you know how to pull these people aside? And Dr. Ramsland stated in an interview on News Nation with Brian Enton that she had no clue. She was unable to distinguish. She takes them all at face value, but she didn't see any red flags at all with Mr. Kohberger.
They rarely ever have any red flags either. Like, it could be your best friend or your neighbor next door, and you're never going to know because they act just like anybody else. They're normal.
Yeah, and that's what she said. She said he went through the class, 4 classes she had with him, and never once was there a red flag.
Now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about. We all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
I don't know. I found that really interesting that, she's a forensic psychologist. And even though Mr. Kohberger took 4 classes with her, there was no indication. There's no indication at all that, this is someone that's going to end up becoming a criminal. What would you have thought if you had gone to school with him and, now all these years later, you find out that something like this happened? What would you think?
I mean, in the moment, I wouldn't think anything of it because he portrayed himself as a normal human being, but I would kind of be a little terrified now knowing, and I would think back of oh, how did he act, and try to pinpoint what went wrong.
I'm trying to think, well, she is a psychologist. Aren't psychologists supposed to be able to diagnose people? I mean, no, it wasn't a clinical setting in the classroom, but I understand that not only was she his teacher, but at some point was also the advisor of all the students in that program, the master's program. And so as an advisor, again, it's not a clinical setting where you go in, close the door, and, ask the questions that you're required to answer to see if you fit the pegs in the DSMs, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So it's not that type of a setting, but still she did spend some time with him. But I think the answer to my concern lies within the book that she wrote on Dennis Rader, the BTK killer.
But I think that if he was studying psychology too, he could have known how to put on a fake front in front of her as well, so she couldn't diagnose him or study him.
Yeah, and a lot of people go through that program, and as she pointed out, people go into law enforcement, teaching, and other valid fields. I mean, I've been reading true crime for years. I have 2 shelves at home, and I only have 2 shelves because now I tend to get the books online on Kindle. I have her book on Kindle. Her book about Dennis Rader. But I mean, so I've been reading true crime for years. I mean, does that make me a criminal? I mean, no, I'm telling you right now. But I mean, a lot of people buy those books. I'm old. I go to the bookstore. I go to Barnes and Noble. I mean, a lot of people do buy their books, as I do sometimes, on Kindle or on Amazon.com. I mean, it's so easy. You order the book and you sit there and wait for the UPS truck to show up. But you go to Barnes and Noble on a rainy day, and there are a lot of people hovering around the true crime section of the bookstore. What are we going to do? Arrest everybody at the Barnes and Noble bookstore? So, it's a tough thing to think about. But here's an interesting comment that she made herself in her book about Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. And his questioning how he himself could have these 2 different personalities. Asked if there is something he would like others to know about him, Rader says, quote, "Why can I be so normal yet slide into the dark and hurt those people and my loved ones? He hopes to benefit the families of his victims by trying to tell the real story so that others like the police, may learn. And that's her writing in the book called Confession of a Serial Killer. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting. The other thing that comes to mind is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, had a spree through multiple states, and he appeared, whatever normal is, the great crime writer Ann Rule sat beside him working at a crime line at the Seattle, Washington Police Department. She had him over to her house for dinner. And when the suspicions first came out that, he drove a yellow Volkswagen, and that's what a lot of the victims were seen driving off with, she was like, no, couldn't be him. And she was in total denial. So, in these three cases, Bundy and the BTK and now Bryan Kohberger, multiple, I'm not going to say multiple personalities because I'm not a clinical person. I'm not a psychologist. I have a Psych 101 view of psychology. But at the same time, these people present multiple facades to the public. And so it's really hard to, if she can't tell, if Catherine Ramsland can't tell, and she has no signs and she's a psychologist, how many other people out there are capable of the kind of thing that Mr. Kohberger did? And there's no way we can tell. There's so many unanswered questions, really a lot of unanswered questions. And a lot of people have been critical of the plea hearing and the questions that were asked by the judge, which were all proper questions. A, he had to set out a factual basis, and B, he had to make sure that what Mr. Kohberger was saying was willing, knowledgeable of his own free will, and that was done. But a lot of people are angry. 2 of the 4 families are angry. The Goncalveses have been very outspoken. People are saying, he should have been asked certain questions. We still don't know the motive. Well, 2 things about not knowing the motive. 1, motive is not an element of the crime. And 2, in that it's not an element of the crime, we might have gone through an entire 3-month trial and we wouldn't have known what the motive was. I mean, the trial doesn't necessarily address that. So I don't know, Kelsey, what do you think? Do you think that there should have been a trial?
I think there should have been a trial.
Why?
Because I just feel like taking the plea deal, he's just going to get put away. He's not going to speak, and everything is still going to be left unanswered.
Yeah, I feel that in a 3-month trial, we still, wouldn't know the motive. We wouldn't know a lot of the things that only he knows unless he testified. Some people are critical of the plea deal because they feel that, the families didn't really get the opportunity to sign off on it. There are details that only Mr. Kohberger knows. Where's the knife? I thought it was interesting that during the plea hearing, Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, talked about how the day after he drove down to an area where there are 2 rivers, and he didn't come right out and say it, but the inference was there, which, who knows whether it's true or not. Is that where Bryan Kohberger threw the knife? Why don't we ask our viewers? Why don't we ask our viewers to comment? Do they agree with the plea deal? Do they think there should have been a trial? Number 10 is from Sally Balls, 22. The bottom line is he admitted to premeditated 4 counts. He did not want to go to trial because he felt they would lose. He was so uncomfortable to face the death penalty and have the entire case presented in front of the world and his mother that he willingly accepted the likely worse fate. His whole life in prison without any hope of a retrial or parole. That's something that's out there, that he took a plea so as not to make his parents testify. I don't know if I buy that. You'd buy that?
No.
Yeah, I mean, when so much is at stake, I think he had a chance at trial. I really do.
Number 9, Awesome Town Matt. If Kohberger did this and the state was so confident with the evidence, they would have included that Kohberger give a detailed account of his actions that night, starting with the time he left his apartment, the route he took to King Road, what door he entered, what the inside of the house looked like, where the victims were, how he killed them, the order he killed them. Did he encounter anyone inside? Did he say anything to them? What was he wearing? What did he do with the clothes he was wearing? How did he avoid getting any DNA in his car?
Yeah, all good questions. All good questions. Not necessarily that we would have gotten those answers in the trial, but they're all good questions. Number 8, Tanya Mans. It's my opinion that the state just gave KB the platform to feed his grandiosity. Everyone will want him to have answers and will want interviews with him. All the details the families and the public wanted. Then he can have a platform to speak from and relive his horrific crimes. It's not about money for him. It's about fame. He can play cat and mouse with information and keep the interest in his case alive for years to come. That should not have been made so easy for him. I don't know. I understand that it's not so easy in Idaho for convicts in jail to give interviews. Not that it doesn't happen, not that a forensic psychologist with the connection that she had in a previous life with Mr. Kohberger wouldn't be allowed under certain circumstances to do interviews, whether in the facility or by Zoom or telephone or some other, mechanism. I just don't know. I feel fairly certain that some interviews will be done. But I'm not sure a lot of them will be done. I don't know if you saw Son of Sam has been doing some interviews. Son of Sam, the 44 caliber shooter that terrorized New York City for a couple of years back in the mid 1970s. And everybody thought it was an open and shut case. And I've watched a couple of things with him where, they really go down some rabbit holes. And if you want to watch about Son of Sam, watch some episodes about Son of Sam. There's a whole cult out there that is said to have set him up. I don't know. If you've seen those, comment down below if you buy any of it. If you haven't seen them, go watch them and get back to us. I don't know. That just proves the point of this whole case. The court accepted his plea. He said he made the plea voluntarily and knowingly. But for the lawyers out there that say there's finality, no.
Number 7, Slock 9635. Let's be honest, this plea deal is bizarre. This crime was unspeakably awful ×4. 0 requirement on BK to tell the full story. 0 requirement on him to say, hey, BK, tell us something that only the perp would know. Blank look on everyone's face like this was a surprise to everyone. Victims' families showing no support for the deal, some outraged by it. What was this?
All good questions. What are your feelings about that?
I do think there's some bizarre things going on with the case. It doesn't add up, like how the person in the last comment was saying how he got rid of his clothes, how there were no DNA. It was a very clean thing.
Yeah. Number 6, Rosanna Hall, 265. I truly feel there is some sort of underlying issue that caused BK to accept this plea. There were too many questions and no concrete evidence, all was circumstantial. The knife sheath was a moving object and touched DNA only. Something is not right in this case. This, amplifies what you just said. I'm wondering if Ann Taylor has some sort of DNA proof that will exonerate him down the road. Oh, come on. I don't know about that. If Ann Taylor had some sort of DNA proof that will exonerate him down the road, why didn't she keep going with the case? All right. Okay. I just feel that there's something else coming. In my opinion, it's like someone who has threatened him and made him do this. Again, my opinion, this is fishy.
A lot of people do feel that way. A lot of the comments are saying that. I'm having a hard time with this. Because,
it is a plea deal. As I pointed out, those statistics that talk about how, there's an innocent project, which is a valid project. We've talked with attorney Kevin Curtis, who's part of the Innocence Project out of Washington State. I agree that there are innocent people that have been both convicted and forced to take a plea. But this is not that case. This case is very different, and for the reasons that I stated before. So as an attorney, I have to think that, how do you stand up and say, yes, 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 multiple times? I did it. I'm guilty. And I'm not just saying that I'm guilty because I did the crimes. How do you do that 4 times? I mean, at any time, if he had been coerced, we're not talking about an idiot. We're talking about a guy that had, a master's degree, and now he's accepted into a PhD program. And just to get into a PhD program, he's already passed the smart, stupid test. So if he, at any time when the judge kept asking him questions, he could have said, no. You know what, Your Honor? I don't agree. I don't agree. Ian Taylor has done me wrong. Elizabeth Mossoff has done me wrong. Jay Logston was taken off the case. Bicca Barlow's sitting there upset. And the reason they're all upset is because I didn't do it and I'm not going to go through with it. But he didn't do that. He did not do that. So as an attorney, I've got to accept the fact that he did it. He pled guilty. Go away for life. We don't want you on the streets anymore. But there's all these comments. There's so much doubt. There's so much doubt out there. And this commenter, kind of puts it all into perspective. This is fishy. I don't know. I am having a hard time with this.
Number 5, Layla Balzac. As citizens in a democratic society, we have not only the right, but also the responsibility to question those in power, especially public officials whose salaries are paid by taxpayers. This includes judges, prosecutors, and anyone involved in the legal system. In the case of Bryan Kohberger, many people have expressed concern and frustration with how certain aspects of the case are being handled. While we understand that the courts must operate independently and without undue influence, it is also important to recognize that citizens have a right to voice their opinions, ask questions, and demand transparency in the pursuit of justice.
Yeah, this comment goes on for 2 pages.
Disagreeing with the judge's decisions or actions does not mean we are trying to interfere with the legal process. It means we care deeply about justice, fairness, and accountability. Public officials, especially those in positions of great responsibility, should be open to respectful criticism and dialogue. Silencing or dismissing citizens' concerns only increases mistrust and undermines confidence in the system.
It's true. Question authority. Authority should always be questioned. And this judge had a bad attitude. He came right in and said words to the effect of he wasn't happy to be there. And his attitude all the way through the case was, I'm not happy to be here. And you know what? We're going to get this over as soon as possible. I set a trial date. We're going to try it on that date, whether you like it or not. And I don't know. It's just, I hate to speak against a judge. I really don't, because I go before them. And they're not going to like what I just said. But that's how I feel. Dorothy O2K. I still see, there's so many people out here that have this sentiment. They're not going to let this go. I still say he's innocent, and he basically forced into taking a deal. He would have never gotten a fair trial.
Number 3, Rockin' Reaction Rollers. What makes it weird to me is the hearing they had about a month ago. Ann Taylor is telling the court Bryan Kohberger knows who the killer is, and she knew the killers.
I think it should say, and she knew who the killers are. I don't know.
And she knew who the killers are. And then just all of a sudden, Bryan Kohberger is the killer. I would really like to know when Ann Taylor found out that Bryan Kohberger was going to do this, or when he admitted to her that he was the killer, and why she allowed him to.
That's a real question in this case. There have been all these hearings. At one point, she filed 21, 22 motions at a time to remove the death penalty from the case. Didn't work. Another time, she also filed a volume of motions on the issue of the alternate perpetrator. And they went nowhere. And she also did a motion to continue based in part only on the publicity that is surrounding the case, but also in part that there was so much discovery. And then she stood up in court and said, yeah, I have all the discovery. So It's a good question. The storyline that's been put out in Idaho is that, the week before the last full week of June, apparently Ann Taylor asked the prosecution, do you want to talk about some kind of a plea? And that's when the prosecution said, yeah, we'll drop the death penalty. And then at the very last minute, they said, yeah, the thing was announced initially on News Nation on Monday, June 30th. And then 2 days later, we had a hearing. So it happened awfully quickly. It happened, in my mind, unless there's a lot that we don't know, and there has to be a lot that we don't know in this case. It happened without reflection. Although Mr. Kohberger has been behind bars, as I said before in this episode, for 2.5 years. So I don't know. It is fishy. I'll say it. I'm sorry, but this is the ultimately, see, this is the view of, I would say, 90% of our commenters. And you know what? I'm getting sick of people call us, I'll speak for myself. People call us Probergers. And on the same day, they call us guilters. So I've tried to maintain all along in our coverage of this case, his innocence, which he was entitled to a presumption of innocence until the end, until he pled guilty. But by being objective, I've been berated by both sides. I've been called a Proberger and a guilter. But anyhow, I'm sorry, but this case is the ultimately worst handling of a murder case I have ever seen. From day one, the entire investigation was horribly mishandled. They had all kinds of law enforcement going in and out of the crime scene without making sure there was no cross-contamination. This new judge is awful. He made it very clear he did not want to preside over his case with the plea deal being accepted without speaking to the families about what was happening is such a huge slap in the face to the families and the victims. So many unanswered questions. And why was Ann Taylor smiling and not consoling her client? Why was Kohberger so calm about the entire thing? I don't know. What do they want him to do? Jump up and down? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. It was kind of spooky. Didn't you think it was spooky that Ann Taylor was smiling during this hearing?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's a defense attorney. She's one of the top defense attorneys in Idaho, and she's smiling when her client is pleading out. Is that for real? I mean, I don't know. So you can see that our viewers, and that is we can't get all of our viewers in because there are so many comments that we get. So that is, I have to tell you, a cross section. And I would say the cross section of our commenters just have a real problem with this plea. So I don't know. I think that this case is going to live forever. In Boston, there's a song. Did you ever hear this? The song about Charlie on the MTA? I'm not going to sing it because I can't sing. But Charlie gets on the green line. He gets on one of the trolleys. And I don't think it's that way anymore. I don't know because I haven't been on the Boston T. I used to live on it. But when you get to the end of one of the trolley lines, you had to put a quarter to get off. You had to put a quarter in the little token box to get off. Well, as the song goes, Charlie didn't have a quarter. So the song is Charlie still riding around the streets of Boston on the MTA? So that's where the term Charlie card comes from. You get a Charlie card, which you pre-buy your ticket to get on the T in Boston. So that song has been around forever. Charlie is still riding around beneath the streets of Boston forever. Is this that case? Is this Charlie? Is this case going to go on forever? And my answer to that is yes. We still read about In Cold Blood. We still read about Charles Manson. We still read about Ted Bundy. And this case, I'm going to say, is going to catapult to the top. I think we'll see a lot of books. We'll see we know we're going to see documentaries. We know we're going to see newspaper articles, just all kinds of thoughts about this case. But my question is this. Is it all going to be bull, or is some of it going to actually dig into all the stuff that's been sealed during this case? Because so much has been sealed from the very beginning. There was a non-dissemination order that both parties agreed to Judge Hippler came around and he thought, well, maybe, maybe I'll be more open. He wasn't. Everything was sealed. You can go onto that docket and see hundreds of documents. And that's not an exaggeration. Hundreds of documents sealed. So I don't know. I just think that, it's just a horrible thing. And the worst part about it is that, it is all about Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, and their families will have to live with this forever. Some of the families have said that the plea deal is okay. Some of the families, expressed their concerns about it. And so I just, need to remind myself and our viewers that this is such a sad case. Kelsey, what are your closing thoughts?
I'm just curious to know if Kohberger is going to speak on the 23rd. Not that it's going to change anything because he's already convicted, but I know people really want answers.
Yeah, they do. They do want answers. I doubt it. Like I said in the previous episode, I would bet a cheap cup of coffee, not the expensive stuff, that he will not speak. Do you want to take that bet?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to speak.
Okay,
I think he's going to stay silent the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that, he's already pled guilty, so he really can't do any more damage to the case. And there's nothing that he could say that the families would accept. I'll just say that. If you've lost your daughter or son and he gets up there and says, oh, I'm sorry, I'd like to bash you in the face is what they're going to say. No violence. We don't espouse violence on this channel. But that's what they would probably say, that, the families of everybody in the courtroom has been, admonished, no outbursts, no, emotion. But how do you feel if you're a parent, if you're one of the parents of these 4 kids, and most of them have been pretty silent? How do you feel if a guy gets up there and says, I'm sorry? How can you stop yourself from, saying something?
Sorry is not going to cut it.
No. If I bump into you while I'm getting on the subway, I'm sorry. And you say, okay, no problem. This isn't that. This is not that. This is, so yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We'll be watching the sentencing hearing. The whole world will be watching the sentencing hearing. We've had comments from, in the Karen Reed case, we had comments from 74 countries. We didn't keep track in this case, but I would guess that if we had kept track, we would have 74 countries and all 50 states. It's just, this happened out in Idaho, but, we've had comments from, I believe, almost all of the states. Again, we haven't kept track. So I have a closing comment, and it has nothing to do with this case. I'm going to jump the shark and say, you know what? Where are the Jeffrey Epstein files? Where's the Jeffrey Epstein list? Commenters, dear commenters, if you stayed with us until the very end, let us know, what you think about the Kohberger case. But why is it that Attorney General Pam Bondi said that she had a list of the Jeffrey Epstein clients and she was reviewing it, and now all of a sudden, oh, there is no list? Oh, really? What happened? Did it get the same thing as Richard Nixon's 18-minute silence on the tapes? I know I'm showing my age, but the problem is, how could there be a list of Mr. Epstein's clients and now all of a sudden there isn't a list? And I don't do politics on this show. I hate politics. I hate politicians. I don't do politics. But apparently there were members of both political parties that were on this non-existent list, or the list that is not being released. So someone, somewhere, somehow, deep in the bureaucracy in Washington, I would think, is going to let it out. So I know I asked you for your closing comments before. Anything else before we go to the grocery store?
No.
Okay.
Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.
This is fishy.
A lot of people do feel that way. A lot of the comments are saying that.
I'm having a hard time with this.